All right, well, thanks folks for being here on this lovely day. Before we do get started, I actually want to remind folks that we have Dr. Susan Newcomer speaking at 1:30 today in this room. She was a part of the NIH, a program officer at NIH for many years, and is going to talk about navigating the NIH. So I encourage you to come at 1:30 to that. All right, so today we've got Dr. Stan Ahalt here. He's the Dean of the New School of Data Science and Society and a professor in the Department of Computer Science. He was the longtime director of RENCI, and he came to UNC in 2009. And really since that time, he's been really integral in advancing data science here at UNC and launching several major data initiatives. And of course, was instrumental in actually getting this new school started. And he's, of course, a well-established expert in computer science, and his work is in all sorts of areas like healthcare, environment, judicial stuff. And so what I really want to make sure I emphasize today in this introduction is that there will be time for a Q&A afterwards. So Dan and then Jay Aikat in the back there will also be part of that. And she's the associate dean, senior associate dean of the school. And so they are really open to collaboration and figuring out how we can work together and what kind of insights we can share from our various data science initiatives and things we've done and what we can learn from them. So please think as you're listening to his talk, how your own work or some of your interests might overlap and align with what the school is doing. And so please bring those up afterwards, or of course, reach out to them later, but really think about how CPC and maybe your own research and department can also work with what's going to be happening in the new school. So with that, thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Very courageous. So I want to start with a question. How long do you imagine it's been since UNC created a new school from scratch? Yes.
20 years.
Good guess. Not correct. Barbara, do you know?
I'm going to guess 100 years.
So you're closer. It's 72 years. Okay, and that was the School of Nursing. And it's a very odd thing to be starting a new school without an institute or something before it. And interestingly enough, at least it was to me, there's no rules about how you start a school. You have to go figure this out from scratch. So what I'm going to talk to you all about today, and please don't hesitate to ask questions along the way if something looks funny or why did you do it that way? I'd love to hear this because I'd like to hear your perspective. More importantly, it helps us calibrate on where we're not necessarily conveying the process that we're going through. It's been about 6 months, almost 7 months since we launched this school. And it's been a very interesting journey. We've been able to hire a team, some of whom are here, and they'll be, raise your hand if you're part of SDSS. Jay's hand raised. So they're a wonderful crew, and we've been working very hard for these months. And I think we're making some progress, but it is slow. Doing things at UNC generally requires a lot of steps, and that's because we try to do things the right way, whatever the right way happens to be for each particular task. And it's not really. So this is what we're going through. So I want to talk to you about the School of Data Science and Society. And the most important thing for me to do is declare. It is not off, it is on. And I know it worked earlier.
Sometimes when we lose focus, it doesn't know what to do, so we just have to click back in there. So you can mouse and click.
Ah,
And then it should work.
very handy. Thank you.
So
So I'm hoping to give you an overview for about 20 minutes, and then a example of some stuff that's been in the past and is in the present and is in the and then I'll take questions and answers. And we're very eager to hear your advice and see where you might think that we need to spend more energy and time. So our team is these 12 people. Again, the people you saw here, there's 5 or 6 of them here. And we've not yet hired any faculty, although we're in the process of making a hire quite soon. We're hiring, and I'll have more details about this, about 15 faculty this year, we hope. Some of them will be term faculty, some of them will be tenure track faculty, some of them will be joint hires, some of them will be hired directly into the SDSS. We hope to do that again and again and again for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So we intend to grow to a fairly large size, and we anticipate having a fairly large undergraduate population. And again, I'll show you a timeline of what we're thinking, but there's always things that crop up about starting a new curriculum. And there's surprises along the way about what has to be sent to the Board of Trustees or the Board of Trustees and the Board of Governors. And so it's been very interesting learning all of the administrative that you have to know to be able to pull this off. So it's good fast. So we have a draft mission statement, vision statement, values and priorities. And we're working with Paul Frieger from the School of Business and his team to go through the strategic planning process. I'm on 3 other committees that are doing strategic plans for other units on campus. Paul Frieger is doing all of them. By the end of this year, he'll have helped like 40% of all of the units on campus. So the mission statement, I'm not going to read these out to you, but the bottom line is we believe that data can really bridge boundaries. And in fact, I think data is a boundary object, these stars of literature. I think that data can be used as a way of bringing groups of people together. We hope that we can, because of the and society in our name, we hope we really can revolutionize impact data for good, okay? And hopefully to minimize the bad, because anything that has a certain amount of latent energy, and that's the way I like to think about what data has in it, it could be used for good and bad, and we want to make sure that we're training people to do very good things with data. We are going to focus very much on using data on ourselves. We want to evaluate ourselves constantly and be very student focused at the undergraduate and the graduate level. We are going to be very pragmatic and collaboratively solve real world problems. We have an opportunity here to not just be in the area of theory, but also in the area of making sure that what our theory is discovering is applied for the good of mankind and womankind. And we intend to weave access into everything we do, because we think there is a divide right now in the way data is available to different communities. We have to make sure that we're bringing those communities together and having them help shape our thinking about the new school right now. And I'll have more to say about that. We have a special committee right now formed to help us to get advice on how we can make sure that the and society is really meaningful and really embedded directly into the progress. So our priorities right now, which have been carefully discussed with the chancellor and the provost, are to get the new educational and research programs up and running, secure sustainable research. We have a request after the General Assembly. We'll see how this budget cycle goes. We've had good tax revenue, so I'm hopeful, but you never know how the landscape is going to unfold. And then we also want to help create a pan-campus infrastructure that allows us to collaborate at scale. And if you want to ask me a question that gets me off on a tangent that's of a philosophical nature, you can ask me what I mean at scale, because there's 3 major components to doing data science. And I would say it's scale, speed, theory. And those 3 things are that we don't talk about them all of the time. They're very important. And if you're watching the ChatGPT phenomenon unfold, that's where speed and scale have kicked in. And I don't think that could have been done by anything other than a large company. So we have a discussion we're going to need to have on the democratization of data science, because right now it is not democratized. It is held in the hands of very wealthy companies. I'm not sure that's where we ultimately need it to be, because we can't allow our scholarship to reside in the hands of a Google or a Bing. And those are the 2. That's the only 2 right now that are in action. And I will be glad to tell you about what I'm hoping we can do as a university to address this issue and hopefully gain an advantage accordingly. So we put together 5 groups: Pan-Campus Advisory Council, a Research Advisory Council, 2 committees that are co-joined and talking about the undergraduate curriculum. We have a working group where we're talking to folks out in industry. And then we have what we've called right now the Society Action Council. And we've convened that group for the first time last week. We're convening a group to help us understand which communities we need to bring to the table so that we're informed from the beginning about how to form the school so that the and society is a first-class good. So I want to talk about each of these in turn to varying levels of specificity. So the Pan-Campus Advisory Council is supposed to give us strategic advice on our academics and our research and our service across the campus. And so since data science permeates every nook and cranny of our campus, there's very few places that aren't data involved or even data driven. I would say that's vastly the case for every unit on campus. So we've assembled a group of people from across campus. We try to find at least one person from every unit, and we have 3 from the College of Arts and Sciences. These are going to be rolling committees where some people go off and it's a 2-year term, so that we have some staggered intersection, so that there's some continuity and kind of overlap in thinking and knowledge, because there's going to be a lot of change here at the beginning. So we've been trying to find very representative groups. If you're interested in being involved in any of these groups that we're forming, don't hesitate to reach out and express an interest in. I honestly believe they've been very interesting meetings to have, because there's a lot of people from very disparate viewpoints and just different disciplines, and it's a rare opportunity to be able to intersect with this many people from across campus on a regular basis. The Research Advisory Council, we have picked people from various disciplines. We intend to hop around and make sure that we're covering all of the disciplines that we should be covering, and we're not even sure what that means yet. We want to be very open and inclusive about making sure that we have people who can really think outside the box. I saw an NSF note earlier today that somebody has just done a study on the impact of the papers that we're writing. And they went back to 1980 and they were looking at how the impact of any one paper has gradually decreased over the years. And it's very much the case for a lot of disciplines. Every one of them are kind of highly correlated. And it's part of the issue that we're writing smaller papers because that's what we're incented to do. And so I want us to be able to think about how they made the further argument that as a consequence of that, number of patents, the number of innovations, the number of significant disruptions have gone down as well from the paper production. Producing more papers, but per paper, they're not necessarily having the same impact. That worries me. I don't want data science to fall into that same, I don't know if it's a trap or how I would label it, but I'd like to think that we think very carefully about what we can do in the universe of data science to really have an impact for the good, for the people, because that's what we're here for as a university. So this group will advise us on our strategic research areas. So where should we start making investment? Also in some core facilities, and by facilities, I don't necessarily mean capital infrastructure. I also mean the resources where we have people to help us produce cross-disciplinary proposals in a timely fashion. Right now, we have 5 or 6 very large NIH programs that we're doing in the data science space. And a lot of that is a data coordination task. And we have to have people with a very varied set of skills to be able to pull off a successful implementation of very large scale data collections. And it is very complex in the infrastructure and the people that you need to be able to do these things is quite amazing. It's expensive to collect the data, and it's just about as expensive to continue to use it for the long term, particularly setting it up so that you really get good secondary use. I know the CPC is very interested in how to do this, and I know you all have made some recent investments in bringing some very interesting data to campus, and we'd love to be able to talk to you about how we might be able to collaborate. I have a big scheme, which I've presented with the chancellor, so we'll see if there's some way we could work together. So the Research Advisory Council members are the folks you see here, and they've met very frequently and with a lot of energy, and we're trying to hone in on what are our core areas that we need to be focused on in data science. It's not quite as pan-campus as the other group because we wanted to have a somewhat more focused set of discussions. But after these folks help us get some direction in what we're calling research clusters, and those research clusters might be places that we currently have strength and we wish to reinforce, or perhaps they are areas that we want to innovate in and we need to hire in those areas. Or perhaps there's areas where if we just had a little bit more people in this particular area, we could really make it take off. So that's what we've charged this group with doing, is helping us figure out how we can put together the investments that the university is making in the new school to the benefit of everyone across campus as much as possible. The BAS and BA curriculum committees are meeting as we speak. They are have been asked to come together with the curriculum by the end of the summer of 2023. We hope then to put the request for approval in the fall and launch the following fall. Once we have the curriculum reasonably well defined, we intend to expose that curriculum to the campus. By expose, I mean share it with you all so that we can get feedback. But we also want to be able to allow students to start thinking about, maybe I want to be able to graduate with a degree in data science instead of a degree in whatever it is, or maybe it's a minor. There's already a huge number of people in the minor program. So we're hoping we can, soon after launching, start to graduate students with this new degree. We are also talking to leadership, chancellor, provost, but there's lots of other people in this discussion about how the school will impact other units on campus and their either overpopulation or underpopulation, as well as how are we going to change the number of students that we educate on campus, particularly in light of the changes that are occurring across the North Carolina system. We are in a very fortunate position that UNC always attracts far more students than we can bring in. That's not the case for all of our shared universities across the state of North Carolina. So we need to be producing more students. And of course, that has a commensurate challenge that is accompanying it, because there's lots of things that you have to be able to do if you're going to significantly increase the number of students on campus, particularly at the undergraduate level. The curriculum committees are as follows. Shankar Committee is the chair of both of the committees, and then you can see who the other folks are, and they have been very carefully picked in conjunction with the College of Arts and Science, so that because we know we're going to get a lot of the core curricular material from existing courses. So we're working very hard. The BS curriculum in data science will reside in the new school. The BA for data science will reside for now, for at least this thread of the BA in the College of Arts and Sciences, because they already had that underway. We may also see that we want to create other possible Bachelor of Arts in Data Science with the other units, including centers and institutes. So that's something to think about, is that if that is something that needs to be explored with the CBC, we may want to think about having a discussion about undergraduate students. I have no idea. I'm not trying to spring anything on you. Thinking. We also have an industry working group that we're currently forming. We've talked to probably, Juan, would you say 15 different industry groups, some number that's reasonably close to that?
Around,
yes. We have a small group that folks on campus have been helping us quite a lot. Juan is certainly one of those, where we're looking for very focused engagements with some companies that are here in the Triangle. We've also had some large companies reach out to us and show an interest in the new school. And surprisingly enough, at least I'm surprised, maybe I should have been, the and society part is what really has excited them. There are other schools of data science, but declaring that we're really focused on the human-centric issues surrounding data science is something that's very appealing to IBM and to SAS and to Cisco, because they know that that's how the data science is really going to impact their business. And so they're eager to have an influence on how we set up our curriculum and our infrastructure. So they're going to hopefully help us with our workforce development plans and making sure that we keep a good focus on the right research projects. And I will go faster. The Society Action Council is currently just in a working phase. We're trying to figure out how to set it up. We've had one meeting. It was extremely exciting. We're looking to find opportunities that will have substantial social impact. We have kind of started to focus in on the idea that we may want to start with our own community right here locally in Chapelville and have some discussions with the community about data science and what the citizenry want us to be measuring and watching and looking at, because that's an opportunity for us to do something that bridges the university and the town. But just as importantly, we also want to have a very active discussion with a large group of people on key investments that we need to make in ethics, data stewardship. How do you take care of data and make sure that you're sustaining it over the long run? How do you create infrastructure that could be shared? How do you do the scholarship around data? You know, I happen to be on an editorial board of science on science and data, and it's been very interesting watching how the large journals have been making this path toward in the scholarship around data, because it was not something that we knew how to do 5 years ago. There are some groups that do know how to do it, but not every discipline had a really good idea, and also in the curriculum. So that is going to be a significant amount of effort for us, and it's going to be the area that that a lot of energy is going to be poured into, and we're hoping to do that. These are the people that we have initially convened from across campus. They are going to help us create a charge for the actual committee, actual council that we put together. They may not be these people, there may be some other mixture, but we've really had a very eclectic group and very significant differences in perspectives, and it was just marvelous. It was fantastic, and surprisingly enough, they're very eager to engage with the new school, because they can see that the resources being poured into it can have benefit across campus, including the arts, including music, including the humanities, everywhere. It's been I've hardly had anybody be unhappy about the new school. I'm sure there are people, and I'm sure they like to self-identify when they have time, but we've been very gratified with the warm reception we've had. Our roadmap is we're trying to get the online course that we're doing with 2U launched in a very short period of time. We hopefully by the end of the fall, we're working through some of the sticky issues right now, and there was many emails this morning, Jay, about certain issues that you're well aware of. Then we'll worry about getting the data science, the residential undergraduate degrees launched. And we'll also have a residential, and this says MADS, but actually it's going to be residential on-campus master of data science. That's something I noticed, but I didn't have time to change. And then we'll launch the PhD program. And we also are hoping that we can launch some programs where disciplinary areas can have an additional tag of some sort, so that they could have a degree in an undergraduate degree in public health and data science. So we're trying to work through how we might do that. So you could have it data science and public health, and I'm using public health because I've talked to Nancy a lot because she's one of the new deans. But those are the types of things that we're trying to figure out if we can manage to create such structures across campus. And the online Master of Applied Data Science was cooperatively put together by the new school Data Science and Society, Computer Science, STOR, Mathematics, SILS, and Biostats. It's supported by 2U under the contract that UNC has signed for a long period of time. The students we anticipate will largely be existing practitioners of data science who want to get an upgrade on their degree. And we're hoping to create something that can be completed in 16 to 20 months and have both full-time and part-time students. And there will be a structure that looks like some core courses, some electives, some immersion time that's going to be optional and they might be in person, and then a capstone process. We have submitted this. It's been approved locally. It's now at the system level, and we're waiting to hear some of the details of that. And it's looking positive, I think, at this point. I think the system is very encouraged by the fact that we're creating a very pragmatic, fast launch of this program. Hiring, we hope to grow to over 40 faculty. We're open to primary appointments being with the new school or joint or secondary appointments with other schools, with other centers and institutes. We're very eager to co-hire in areas that we can see distinct overlap. And we have an approved APT document. So we have, Jay, we have 2 calls on the street right now. Is that right? And we have a third one that we haven't quite finished. So we're actively interviewing faculty members. Spoke to one yesterday, which is nice. We have some additional senior academic deans to hire. We have faculty directors to hire, and we have some staff that we have to staff up on. Now that we have a building, we actually have more stuff to do. So it's great, but we have more challenges. Infrastructure, we're hoping to partner with ITF. We're hoping to build some additional tools. And by that, I mean hardware and software that allow us as a campus to do data science at scale and at speed in the cloud. That's not being done universally. It's not necessarily easily done in any case. And a lot of this is informed by the research experiences I've been having helping NIH figure out how to do this. And so I'm hoping that we can find a way to create some open source software that can be used by lots of people across campus. And then we can start sharing data amongst ourselves in a very facile way. Facile, safe, fair, etc. So that's the objective. is to establish the right administrative and operational process, the governance, so that we're taking care of our data in ways that make sure that it's useful for us for the long term. The corporate landscape, you know, you've seen some of the recent announcement, Apple bringing in $1 billion into North Carolina. RTP is a national hub for biotech, and there's a growing need for more data scientists. So this is clearly a workforce development. And the people, you know, the university folks, Apple, Google, Amazon, SAS, they've been very receptive to what we're doing here. And I'm very encouraged by that. And I do want to show you some number. The median annual salary for data scientists is about $114,000. That was in 2021. I suspect it's considerably higher. And the average of Apple's new position is astonishing at $187,000. So the amount of pros, in fact, let me just jump to this. There are three kind of main areas: data analyst, database administrator, and data scientist. And you can see that amongst those, the data scientists are at the highest pay range. That's because they're expected to be able to do an analyst job and the database administrator's job, as well as being able to tell the story that the data tells in a way that makes an impact on business, on scholarship, on impact on humanity. So this is from 2021, but you can see the trends are very much in a positive direction. So there's a huge demand for the students that we're going to be able to graduate. I just want to tell you three short stories. And I will be brief here because I know I want to save a lot of time for question and answers. So let me tell you the first story, which is really the story of Rick Ludick and RENCI pairing up. And it's the story of coastal resilience. And it's an issue of how accurately can we predict using data science and using some hydraulic science as well. So this is clearly a marriage of a disciplinary area that's very, there's a small number of people who know how to do this. And Rick Ludick, who is part of our faculty, is one of those persons. We teamed up at RENCI with Rick, and the results have been astonishing. We have now gone through the process of taking some very exotic software and gone to the cloud. That is not easy because what you want to do when there's a hurricane bearing down on you. By the way, I got to tell this anecdote. The last time we had a hurricane, somebody sent me a picture of the lobby of the White House with our software up on the lobby wall in the White House. So I was very proud of that because it's used by a large number of people for real impact on people's lives. You know, should I evacuate or not? And people actually get on right before and look at their house and ask, how deep is the water going to get at my place down on Sunset Beach or my place on Holden Beach? So this is a joint effort between the Coastal Resilience Center, which has been funded by DHS. It's forecasting probabilistically the storm surge levels. It's been running now for about 10 years or so. We've revamped the software a couple of times. It's using AI and machine learning techniques to predict where the hurricanes are going to come ashore. And it combines both inland water, which is usually pouring down because it's raining and then rushing out to the shoreline. And the winds are pushing the waves up against the shoreline. And so as a combination of the two, the ADSER, which is the core computational model, is probably the best method in the world to be able to do this. And it's running in the bowels of the basement. And when it gets to the day before a hurricane or 2 or 3 days before the hurricane, we have to start running it much more frequently. So we surge out to the cloud and allow the cloud to help us with the computational load for a short period of time so we can make the best possible predictions for the most number of people. So it's a very high resolution coastal prediction, flooding predictions model. It's used by NOAA, US Coast Guard. Almost every time there's a hurricane, we get thank you notes from federal agencies about how they moved ships or moved blankets or moved water for food evacuation routes. And then during the time where we had the pandemic on us, we didn't want people to be evacuated to places that had very very high occupancy of the hospitals. And we were trying to figure out how to use the information we were getting from these very sophisticated models to be able to make sure that we made good decisions for evacuations during the pandemic. It's won a number of awards, and it's a perfect example of data science. And the ultimate goal is to improve our prediction, and that has happened slowly but surely over the years. And it's now, it's just the gem of a collection of research that we've been doing collaboratively across campus for some years. The second topic I wanted to tell you about, a short story, is healthcare systems, data science issues. Turns out that data science is about a quarter of all of the jobs that people do in the healthcare system now. And it's quite a range of problems that are very interesting. So we're thinking about a research cluster in healthcare systems that are in the new school. And the idea is that things like the average length of a patient stay, the inventory that you have to keep on hand for various contingencies, including a pandemic, and how do you use AI to organize the medical team so you have the right number of staff on hand. In discussions with the healthcare system, this is a pain point for them. They cannot hire enough people. So in some sense, we need data science faculty to teach information systems for the healthcare system, for ours and for other healthcare systems. So the application of data science can revolutionize clinical research as well. If we can speed up the time it takes for us to be able to pull data in order to conduct a trial from the 4 weeks it takes us now to 4 hours, we could revolutionize clinical trials. So that's a request that has been made of the new school, and we're going to partner with the healthcare system and with the School of Medicine in order to try to pull off. It's a consequence of a persistent lack of data science expertise all across the healthcare system. So it's a particularly interesting workforce problem. And here's a good example. The School of Medicine has a great clinical informatics program, but they can only accept 10 students out of the 80 that apply. Okay, this is a PhD program primarily, but also a master's program. So we're hoping that we can somehow figure out a way for the School of Medicine and the new School of Data Science and Society to partner to help out so that we can increase the number of students that we can enroll in these programs so that we have a greater number of research scientists that we can pull into the university and the health business. So this is a very important task for us because the research we do here at UNC in the area of health science is second to none, just like the research you do at the CPC is second to none. This is such an important area for us to focus for research in the future. And ultimately, what do we want to do? Have positive health outcome spikes, expanding the workforce so that we're doing a better job of helping patients. Here's a little bit different one. So for the past 2 or 3 years, I've been involved in a program that's run out of Washington, which has now funded a new effort in training federal judges on the issues of machine learning and data science. And it's become a very fast trend because data is being introduced in the courtroom, and it's very difficult for judges to assess whether or not an expert is an expert in their field and is using data in an appropriate way, in a way that is not laden with bias. So this is an area that we've been now asked to create a special master's course in. It will be 64 judges. It's the first time we do this. We're now starting to work on the curriculum. It's going to be called a resource judge training concentration, so that these judges will know enough about data science that they can be called into courtrooms to give help to existing judges, and they can help train existing judges in the area of machine learning and data science. There, lots of times an independent party is appointed to help with a case, and usually these are former judges. So what we're doing is to help make rulings fairer and more evidence and resolve disputes between parties about documents, about data, about any kind of data science that you can imagine. And this is happening more and more in the courtroom now. And the ultimate goal is to expand applications and understanding of data science to the federal level so that we can be making judgments in the judiciary that are more based in, call it fact. I realize that data is not necessarily factual, but we'd like to think it is for the majority of the time, especially for underrepresented groups, because that's where we really have bias. My apologies. I'm buying a car, so I should have known. I didn't draw my car. So the ultimately goal is to remove bias and improve the ability of the courts to take into consideration the foregoing bias that we have in a lot of the data sets that we're currently using. And with that, I'm done. How did I do time-wise? I did pretty well.
Very good.
Questions, please.
Actually, I have a question. So how would you explain this to the new school as different from what's happening already in computer science or what's happening in information science?
So there is a lot of overlap, okay? But if you, I'm going to take my cue to go down the philosophical hole. A lot of what computer science does is focus on creating new techniques, new innovations that are primarily theoretical. And they do so because, and I'm not saying that they don't have impact as a consequence, but a lot of the research in computer science is oriented toward finding new ways to do computational models, I'll say, but it's not always a computational model. Sometimes it's a model for how a machine should run, okay? And while that is, at least in part, data science, it's not, it is not, they don't study data structures that you would use very commonly in hardcore data science. They do in some cases. Machine learning and AI obviously is in data science, and certainly in computer science, you certainly, we have a large number of people here on campus that are in machine learning and AI. If you look at SILs, they do a lot of work in the area of provenance, in the area of curation, in the area of long-term storage. But what we've experienced in these journeys is that there's a lot of other issues that need to be addressed that could be addressed in a computer science or a SILs, but typically are not. And most of those are focused on including the ability to go at scale and at speed. So for example, one of the reasons that we are challenged by ChatGPT is because when I say challenge, I mean we see the promise and we also see the unfortunate possible uses, which are already being well discussed. It would be very difficult for us to replicate that as a university because it took at least one estimate is that it took about $27 million of compute time to create the collection of numbers that now is the black box that is ChatGPT. Okay, so that's not something, and so as a consequence, it's very difficult for anyone other than a large company to invest that much computation in the task of doing this large learning model. We want to be able to teach our students so that they can go to that scale and that speed and do so in ways that are feasible for lots of people. And so those courses are not being taught on our campus at this point in time. And so while I agree that there's a lot of overlap, there's some new areas that are emerging that are purely data science. Is that a reasonable answer?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm excited about this. Is Sean. Yeah, so the one while we're on the one question I had was related why a school rather than a department? And so you think about kind of methods focused disciplines are typically at department level. Why is a school necessary? That's one. And then two is I think I have plenty of friends that do data science, and I think they would like one thing that that they acknowledge is they don't have area expertise, right, and which is needed at like all stages. And so it seems like you have a strategy to kind of address that, where people aren't applying these skills on useless things, right, or misapplying them. And so, but if you could talk more about kind of your strategy to address that.
So first of all, I think that we have to leave space in the curriculum for people to have subject matter expertise that's outside of data science, and it could be quite varied. Yesterday, I talked to someone who's pursuing a PhD in computer science right now, and she's really focused on accessible artistry. And so she came to me to chat about being on our committee. She is a perfect example of somebody who I would want to be in the School of Data Science, but she's in the she's in the Department of Computer Science because that's the only place she could try to go. So I think that we need to be flexible in how we find subject matter experts and train them to do data science. But I also think we need to be able to do the reverse, which is train data scientists with a speciality in certain types of data. How we're going to do this, I think, is going to be a work in progress. About 60 years ago, and I don't remember all the details, even though I'm old enough to, we created computer science from applied math. And it wasn't well shaped at the beginning because it was an outgrowth of discrete math. Okay, but gradually over the last 60 years, computer science has become a very distinct field. It still does math, and so do the applied mathematicians. In many cases, you can hardly tell the difference in the papers, but the cultural norms are different. And so one of the reasons that I'll say there's two reasons that I personally think that we created a school instead of a department that would have resided somewhere else. One is that we wanted to, well, I'll say there's three reasons. I think the administration was convinced in the 6 or 7 years of careful study that we made of data science that this is real and that we want to do it, and we want to do it our own unique Chapel Hill way. And we want to be experimenting with new types of formatting, structures, organizations, as well as curriculum. So I think it gives us a great deal of latitude. I think it gives us the ability to generate our own students that are branded as data scientists. And you could certainly do that in the department, but you would have had to adhere to structural rules in the school wherever that department would have been located. And because we created a new school and wrote an APT document, we wrote an APT document with a great deal of flexibility so that we can have somebody who's interested in the ethics of AI, somebody who's interested in, how certain methods should be employed for certain different tasks or causality. Okay, we want to be able to have them all come together in the new school. That would have been pretty difficult to do inside of another school. It may could have been done. Certainly other places are doing it that way, but I'm glad we made the decision to try a new school because you should do something different every 72 years. Yes, ma'am.
I may have missed it, but how are you connected to the School of Business? Since business in and of itself is a major consumer of data in all its varieties, from how does Google pitch its ads to all these other things?
So I've been having discussions with the interim dean, and the process of hiring a new dean for the School of Business is well underway. I've also been attending some of their meetings so that I understand their perspectives. And then I have a particularly deep interest in a new initiative that's coming out of the School of Business where they want to look at the data science aspects of the insurance industry. So there's a lot of overlap, and we've been talking about co-hire. So I didn't bring it up here in this talk, but the School of Business and the School of Data Science and Society, I think will have a particularly rich relationship because we are likely to be bringing students into the new school who also have an interest in business. So I think there's going to be mutual ways of us to be sharing students across the disciplinary boundaries. So I'm very interested in that because it's an opportunity for us to create a campus model of a unit, a school that does things in a different fashion. We're going to try to interact with lots of them.
So thank you for coming over. I've heard a little bit about this over the last few years, but not a lot. And so let me share a bit of skepticism.
Sure.
I'm a sociologist and I see the and society. And frankly, I don't see it too much throughout the talk here. I worry a lot about the students that you'll be training and they'll think they'll have social science expertise or something come out of, with the and society coming out of this. And I really worry about that. Thinking about, what kinds of expertise will they have? What kinds of deep expertise in social science might they have? And what it'll do with 18, 19, 20-year-old kids who, maybe previously studied sociology or one of the other social sciences and will move over to the School of Data Science and Society in the future. So even when I think about the leadership team, which, undoubtedly are super creative and fabulous people, I don't see and society in the way that I would think if there was a new school being formed with and society in the name. And so I worry about, campus resources, training of students, research endeavors, the whole thing. So I guess I'll just share that. It's probably something you've heard before, but.
Well, I mean, something that I should continue to hear wherever there's skepticism, that's a healthy thing for all of us to listen to. I have to reflect on the leadership. You have a good point. We brought together people that we knew had a focus, and maybe there's some other people that we need to bring into the leadership team. Jay, do you want to come up here and help answer questions, please?
That's fine. Well, I just wanted to point out one thing is that we have this research advisory council that's faculty from across campus. And we specifically appointed Santiago Olivella, who's a political scientist and a data scientist, as the chair of that committee. And that committee's charge, one of the main charges to begin with, is to help the school figure out take a view of campus, what are the strengths of data science across campus, and what are the weaknesses, so that we can focus ourselves in the right research areas that would lend itself directly to the faculty that we'll be hiring over the next several years. So that's just one example. The other really goes to your point. We're not sitting here saying we know how to do this, the and society part, which is why, although we formed the Pan-Campus Advisory Council and the Research Advisory Council pretty quickly, we didn't presume that we knew exactly how to go about the Society Action Council. We're doing that more deliberatively and thoughtfully, saying, let's bring in the people who can actually tell us how this is supposed to be done. So we've started out with a brainstorming session with several people in the room, knowing fully well that we don't have all the people in those brainstorming sessions even. We're adding people as we talk about it. So we're taking a slightly slower step by step there, because we know we're not the experts in that area, bringing in the experts who can tell us how to do this. So everyone here online, most welcome to give us ideas on how we should be going about that.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow up on Bob's comment. We're
I
old
should
friends,
just go ahead
yeah.
and so that you don't have to look back.
Yeah. So I've been supportive of this from the beginning, but I do have some concerns along the ways that Bob does. And let me put it into NSF speak. So NSF has a way of looking at the world, and you've got your intellectual merit, you've got your broader impact. And I've been, and I've heard lots of research projects where all the really important stuff is done by the real scientists, and you bring in the social scientists at the end for your impact. So I guess I want to caution against that kind of logic, and it worries me a little bit that you've got a social action group that is like your impact group. And I would want to see the social science embedded throughout the whole thing. I know you have people on those various committees. I was interested to see that as well.
Yeah.
But I do, encourage you to continue to think about what this means. Social science at the core, not just at the periphery.
I'm really glad you bring that up. Sorry. We've had these conversations about, we have the Research Advisory Council. Once we figure out the Society Action Council, we need to find that overlap, because it's not going to be two exclusive groups. These groups have to interact. And we think about the society part, both from the core research as well as the impact. So it's definitely not, it can't be exclusive, as you put it so well.
And Barbara, I did not say this, I should have, but in other presentations like this around campus, I've been trying to emphasize that we want to have the and society at the table at the beginning of the process, not at the end. I should have said that. That was and I'd like to have a further discussion about this, how we might ensure that we're not both misleading students, but also making sure that the social sciences, whatever that means, but sociologists are very involved from the get-go. And not just involved in the creation of the school, but involved in the actual running of the school, so that we can keep the focus on making sure that we think about the impact on society and individuals as well, as well as the population from the very beginning of collecting data, rather than trying to fit the story to the results of the analysis. I'd like to make sure that we're doing it right from the beginning. How to do that exactly, I'm not sure. But I'd be very interested in having a discussion so that we, next time you see the presentation, you go, yeah, that looks better. That would be a good thing.
So
I'd like to add one more, sorry.
I was just kind of one related risk is that, even in like our departments, you're gonna attract people that are interested in data science
Oh,
like,
yeah.
inherently, right? And I think, if you put a little effort to go and find people who are not necessarily, leaning that way or more skeptical, right? That would probably add more kind of diversity of viewpoint on the Azure thing, and especially in these different.
That's a good point. I think that we have been working with people who have self-identified largely, and maybe it's a good idea for us to make a little more outreach. I can talk to Ramona, for example, and make sure that she's aware of the fact that we want them to be very deeply involved. That's a good point.
So also I wanted to give some more details on the faculty hiring, which you touched upon.
Oh, sure.
But we have one ad out for 5 positions that are 100% based in the school. But we have other searches ongoing, 5 in the college, 1 with computer science, 1 with statistics and operations research, 1 with math, and 1 with, we're talking to the senior associate deans for the other 2 divisions, the social science as well as arts and humanities. And in social science, Rudy had brought in sociology, political science, and public policy chairs to talk about how we might go about doing that. And the thinking there was, instead of hiring new assistant professors like we're doing with math, STOR and CS, is to go for more associate or full professors. And this is full joint hires. So that's ongoing. In addition, in fact, we've made 1 secondary appointment to, and this is, I can say this because it's official, Courtney Rivard from English and Comp Lit has a secondary appointment in the school. And the second one is still ongoing, but it's a political scientist who's going to come on full joint appointment with the School of Data Science and Society. So yes, we're taking steps, but as your questions indicate, we should be doing more of these, going out and talking to groups, not only to tell you what we're doing, but even more importantly, to get your input on what we should be doing.
And the holes that you see in what we're doing, because we won't see them necessarily. So I think we have to be very open to feedback that your concerns, we have to know about them and think carefully with you on how we might solve those problems, or at least take steps in the right direction. So thank you. I see one back there and one up here. I'll go here first.
So it seems likely that other schools around the country have had the same struggle with social sciences. So I'm wondering if you've been able to get input from social scientists that are trying to be involved in those places to understand maybe what the difficulties have been there, and or consider recruiting them to provide them the opportunity to move in the direction they would like to and they're not being allowed to. So I wonder if that pathway is being used.
This is actually an ongoing, there's a fairly large group of it's called the Academic Data Science Alliance. It's leaders across the country, either trying to or have started institutes, schools, departments, all of those in data science. And initially that group was the usual suspects. And slowly we've started bringing in more, especially social scientists, into the fold. But all I'm saying is, I'm agreeing with you that it's a problem all across and everybody's trying to grapple with it. I don't think anyone has quite done it the way it should be. And in some ways, when we added the AND society, one of the hopes is that we are different. We use what the strengths we have on our campus to really, to make that real. Because most people do talk about ethics and social impact and social sciences, but no one's done it the way it needs to be. Not yet.
I know you have a question, but if you know people that fall into this category of trying to be involved and not necessarily finding satisfaction, I'd love to be able to talk to them. We're being asked to go various places around the country and talk to people about how we're doing this new school. We have a trip coming up in March, I think. And so I'll keep that in mind. This is a really good opportunity for us to ask those questions. We regularly intersect and go visit Berkeley, and we have had very many visits, both virtually and exchanging people back and forth between UVA and here. So this is something that I appreciate you bringing it up. I need to poke around in here more.
In addition to everything Stan said, I would say if you know, new faculty candidates, either looking for those kinds of joint appointments, or if you're in the process of hiring someone who wants some kind of either joint appointment, secondary appointment, or even just an affiliation because we're seeing the school as a hub, just reach out to us.
Okay, I suspect this will be the last question.
Okay, sure. I'm a grad student, so I think since people are providing some critical feedback, I guess my question and thought was, I saw that there's you listed a lot of big tech on there. And so working now with undergrads, I would say, I feel like even more than when I was an undergrad, students are a lot more independent, open-minded to certain things. And so I just hope that there's I don't know what the influence of big tech would be here, or in training people for jobs rather than for knowledge and curiosity and things. So I would just hope that it's open to that. And I think that I am very skeptical of big tech and the control they have of society. So I would hope that their influence on the school or whatever that is less them kind of farming students, for new work, but us being creative about I would see this as data science for society, not and society. It's I'm in public health. So it's not, I obviously have not been part of any of this. So it's not an accusation. It's just I'm imagining students coming in and being this is what I'm looking for, but it's, you know what I'm saying?
I do, and we had multiple long debates about and versus for. And, I don't really know exactly how we ultimately came down on this name, because it was lost in the fog of discussion. But the fact that we have the and society, I think, distinguishes us as declaring something very distinct. And I absolutely agree that we don't want to think just about the endpoints of big tech, and certainly not the big tech that is likely to want to have an influence. I'm hoping that we are a place that graduates students that go into every nook and cranny of society. And we've talked about, we don't know yet how to do this, about how we can help perhaps create opportunities for students who are from underrepresented areas to actually have an impact on their hometown and their communities. And we're not exactly sure how to do this, but we want to do something that has that flavor. And I have seen in the classroom the excitement that students have when you give them data about themselves. And we have lots of data now. We're in a data-rich environment, that's for sure. And bringing that data into the classroom gives them a level of excitement about what they can do with data science. And I think, and that was true across disciplinary areas. So to me, one of the things that most excites me is that I think the students really understand Being facile with data can make a big difference to them, whether they're psychologists or journalists, or the list goes on and on. Now, we need help. This is not a done deal. Don't hesitate to tell us where you think, you've got to do something better here. And it doesn't have to be a one-time discussion. It can be a long-term discussion. We want to do this right. We have to do this right. We have no choice. Every 72 years, we've got to do it right.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming here and giving this talk. I know that if we didn't get to your question, I think there might have been some in the chat, we didn't get a chance to look. Please email them. They are happy to hear this. They want to have this discussion more. So they are open for that. And I do want to remind everyone that we have at 1:30 in this room, Susan Newcomer is going to talk about the NIH and applying for grants and that process. So please stick around and you get a little break, and thanks a lot. Have a good weekend.